Welcome everybody. So today, today's a workshop day, which means we're just going to draw stuff in AutoCAD. I'm not really going to lecture you, and hopefully it's mostly practice and not really, or we're not covering as much theory. So I'm going to share my screen. On this screen, you should see an AutoCAD window. If you don't already have AutoCAD open, go ahead and open it. And while that's firing up in the background, go ahead and navigate to the Chem E CAD Google Drive, which you all have. What's up?
I threw a poop at Natalie.
Oh.
I threw this at her.
Guys, stay on topic. Come on. So if you go to the Chem E CAD shared drive, in the reference materials folder, ping me if you don't have access to this, but you should at this point. I just uploaded this drawing border file. Go ahead and download that and open it up. So when you open it up, it should look something like this. So the first thing we're going to do in here is fix this border because it needs a little bit of work. Does everybody have it up yet?
Wait a second. Where do I find it again?
So in the Chem E CAD Google Drive,
Yeah.
there's a reference materials folder.
Yep.
And then there's a file in there called drawing border.
There it is.
Sorry, drawing border.
Drawing.
Drawing for your drawings. So download that. So by the way, this drawing border came from a file, from a parts file that I downloaded, I think from Automation Direct. I don't remember exactly where I got this, but I just whacked all the content out of it and stole the border because I didn't want to make my own from scratch because it's super time consuming. So just a pro tip, you can always take stuff off the internet and modify it to your own nefarious purposes.
I'm getting an unresolved references warning.
That's fine. So what'll happen is corrupt AutoCAD, huh? So what'll happen is in an AutoCAD file, you can actually create external references to other files. And so this is almost like doing a function call in programming, right? So in this drawing file, you'll reference another, you'll draw like a box. And I haven't really messed with this much, but you'll like draw a box and say inside this box, insert this other file. And so, so if you don't have both those files loaded up, it'll throw an error, right? But you can still open this parent file and whatever content is externally referenced just won't show up. So does everybody see something that looks like this, more or less?
So I'm getting an option to open the external references palette or just ignore the reference files.
Try just ignoring it.
Okay.
I'm still logging.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. Yeah, guys, feel free to chime in and tell me where you're at with this because I don't really want to like dive into this until everybody has it actually up because I'd sort of like you to try to follow along as we go.
I forgot I was a Mac user, so I didn't get my VM open.
Oh. There is an AutoCAD version for Mac. I don't know if you want to try to download
I
and
also
install
have
it.
no storage on this laptop. That's my main issue.
That I cannot help you with. I mean, go through and delete your old high school photos.
I don't think they're on this thing. I think that's on my old cell.
It was a metaphor.
It's very beautiful.
Yes, it's like a melted flower. Okay, are we all here yet?
How did you get it on the grid background?
Oh, so that's the layout versus model tab. So down in the bottom left corner, Hey, by the way, are those weird, annoying rectangles showing up? Just the top right, or
There's one in the top right.
okay, but that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, good.
What the hell,
I'm
man?
better at this. I didn't do anything, man. By the way, you guys know this is recorded, right?
Freedom of speech.
This is America.
America.
And also, this will eventually be uploaded to YouTube. And by eventually, I mean like by tomorrow at the latest.
I'm pretty sure you can say HE double hockey sticks on YouTube.
Yeah. But now I have to restrict it to adult-only content. Gosh.
What if we get flagged?
That means we're doing something right. If my channel gets popular enough to be flagged, I'll be very happy.
Just say the C word.
Computer?
CAD?
One that ends with a number.
CAD?
CAD doesn't end with a number.
I don't know what you're talking about, to be perfectly honest.
Channels get demonetized if they mention coronavirus or COVID-19.
Really?
Oh.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's crazy. Well, we just got demonetized. Thanks, guys.
We'll just have
That's
to edit
so
them out.
weird. Yeah.
Why is this opening in e-drawings?
Because you have it default to open in e-drawings. So one of the things, there's a light viewer for AutoCAD, and so if that happens where it defaults to open in that just go to the file and right click it and just do open with and then do AutoCAD.
Hmm. Ay. Open with.
Okay. Hopefully you guys are close if you don't already have it open. I'm gonna go ahead and start moving forward because we gotta make some progress here. So for those of you, I mean, hopefully you guys have all watched the video if you weren't there on day one. So there's two tabs down in the bottom left corner here, the layout and the model tab. And sometimes when you open a drawing, there'll be multiple layout tabs. It just depends how that particular template's set up. So layout tabs are for viewing in pretty white space like this, and then also layouts are generally what gets printed out in a PDF or to an actual plotter. And so you can define views, different views in a layout. And so the model space is where you're going to do all your actual drawing. So don't ever try to draw anything outside of the model tab. And then the layout tab, you're just going to define your viewports into the model space. And so I'm going to demonstrate real quick. When you go in the model space, this border is actually in the model, right? And then I'm going to draw a little circle here. And then if you go in the layout tab, that circle shows up. And so you can see the viewport in this layout tab is set to basically look at that border in the model space. And so if I go in and I draw a circle outside here, you can see only the arc of the circle that's inside that border is actually being shown. And that's only because of the way the view is defined in the layout space. And so there's ways to set this. If you ever need to change it on a drawing, you can Google how to do that, or how to actually, if you want to define multiple viewports, you can look up how to do that. You have to manually go in and draw a viewport. So what I'm going to show you here is just how to rescale this. So in the layout space, if you double click on here, it basically tunnels into the model space. And so now if you use your mouse wheel, you can zoom in and out in that layout view and view the model space, right? So, and you can actually make edits to the model space in here. Generally speaking, I would strongly advise you to never do that. There are cases where you can do it quickly and it's not a big deal, but I would always do actual drawing modifications in the model tab only. Okay, so now that we're tunneled into the model space in this layout, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna type Z. If you remember, I said like there's AutoCAD is it'll work way faster for you if you get used to using these text commands. There's a lot of common ones that you'll use over and over and over. And so you can Google those. I think, let me check the driver real quick. I think I put a list of common commands in the references. Maybe, maybe not. Okay, if I don't have that up, I'm gonna upload a list of common commands in here and I'll email out about that because that's useful to have on hand. Okay, so back to what I was doing. So type Z and the first Z command is zoom, right? And hit enter. And then you can see on the text line, there's a whole bunch of options here. And so the one we want to use is Extense. So you just type E and then hit enter. And so what that's going to do is in that viewport, it's going to zoom into the extents of your content, right? So it'll show all the content you have in the model space. So this is useful for two reasons. One, if you've done your drawing correctly, it will basically zoom to the edge of your border, right? So in this case, you can see this big circle is outside of my border. That's kind of a problem. So I'm going to delete that. And then I'm going to do the zoom extents command again, and bam. Now my border's nice, tight fit into that viewport window. And so that's the other super useful thing about zoom extents is that if you somehow accidentally added content to your drawing that's way outside of somehow like you were copy pasting, moving stuff around, and you got some rogue content somewhere, when you do a zoom extents, it'll zoom way out and you'll know, okay, I got to hunt down that crap and delete it out of my drawing, right? And you'll actually know it's somewhere on the border, right? Because here, I'll just show you. So I'm gonna do that again. See, it's like way zoomed out, right? And I can see over here on the border, because it's gonna put all content in, the rogue content is going to be way on the edge, right? So I can just look along the border till I find it, delete it, and then zoom back in. Okay, cool. So the only other part of this is once you're done modifying that zoom, you need to go back into a paper space in the layout because right now I'm tunneled into the model space. And I don't want to stay tunneled into the model space because if I stay tunneled in and I zoom out, it's going to resize my drawings, right? This is definitely top 5 most common mistakes I've seen in AutoCAD. I've done it myself many times, and it's super annoying because you'll print a 50-page drawing set to PDF, which takes forever, and then there's 1 or 2 drawings that are zoomed out like this, and you have to go back and fix it and do the whole thing over again. It's a huge pain in the ass. So do your zoom extents, and then you type P space or paper space, and that'll get you back to layout. Alternately, I think you can just so instead of typing P space, you can just double click over in the brown area and it'll go back into paper space. So I just covered that because it seriously is, it's a super common mistake. It happens all the time and it's super annoying. So you can also use the zoom, so go to the model space. We're gonna work in here now. You can also use the zoom extents command in model space. It works the same way. And so that's usually useful for like, instead of trying, if you're zoomed way out like I was, like instead of trying to figure out where's my stuff, you can just zoom into it real quick. It's way, it's way easier. Its size is nice. Okay, so kill that circle. We don't need that anymore. So the next thing I want to work on is fixing up this drawing border. Like I said, I just pulled this out of a module drawing. And so there's a couple mistakes in it, and I really don't like the color scheme. So we're going to fix all that. So if you zoom in up to the top right, this rev block. So this is really important, especially in project drawings where you're going to have multiple review iterations. You're going to need to update this. A lot of companies require this as part of their quality systems. So just always be aware when you're making edits on a drawing, you need to go update the rev block with a brief description of what you did. So as you can see, when I cut this, if you look right here, you can see there's a little bit of green here, and you can see this yellow hangs over here. So that was definitely, somehow that line got shifted. That's bad. So we want to select that line and then type move. And then click on the end of the line and just move it on over to that intersection. So that should work fine if you have your object snap on. And by default, endpoint should be selected. So you shouldn't really have to mess with your settings to make that happen. Okay, so that's fixed. That was just something I caught earlier. Now let's look here. Oh, wow, I got a bunch of, wow. I have a whole bunch of layers in here. So what I want to do is create a new layer. So go ahead and open up layer properties. Why do you suck? Oh. There we go. Sorry, I had to get that on screen. Okay, so then in layer properties, hit the new layer button. It's that layer with a little orange starburst next to it, and just type title block. Okay, and then change the color on that. So you can see there's this column here that says cull, and it's all white. Click on that for your new title block layer, and then just change it to blue. Okay.
Did you have to explode the figure before you selected that line?
I did not. Did you?
I'm trying to, because I can only select the whole thing, it looks like.
Okay.
Really? That's not good. Yeah, try exploding it.
Okay.
That's weird. I wonder, because I'm actually using an older version of AutoCAD than you guys probably are. So there might be a weird versioning issue. Did explode work?
No.
Oh.
Yeah, I remember having this issue when you sent shit over to stuff over to Bill.
Really?
And I figured it out then. Now I don't know what's going on.
Okay.
I also was on a better laptop.
Huh. That's unfortunate. Yeah, honestly, this is the hard part of AutoCAD, is like the file management and getting all the conventions to work. The drawing part is actually easy.
Yeah.
Is anybody else having that problem where they're not able to edit this as individual pieces? It's just one big block. Let's see if anybody's saying anything in the chat. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Did everybody have that problem or that warning when they opened it up about references?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Tell you what, I'm gonna upload all of this stuff, all these DWL files. Okay, so I'm gonna make a new folder real quick. That's really weird. I'm not sure what's going on with that, to be honest.
I just ungrouped it and it worked.
Okay.
How do you ungroup stuff?
You type in
Select it
ungroup.
and type ungroup.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Yeah, to be honest, I'm not sure the difference between ungrouping and exploding, because explode should work. but apparently it doesn't. Yeah, and like group doesn't work, so, or it doesn't turn it into a block. Okay, everybody try using ungroup and see if that worked.
Oh, hey,
That
there
worked.
it goes.
Okay, cool. All right, so ungroup. Thanks for chiming in on that, because guys, seriously, let me know if you're having issues through this, because I don't want to just like go way down the line and have somebody or multiple people having an issue like that.
All right.
Okay, so fix that line that was over in the corner. It was off like that. You can move it or you can just reclip it. Either way is fine. And then did everybody get that layer made up? Oh gosh.
No, can you
Yeah.
go over that real quick?
Yeah. Oh my good lord. Okay, so if you go on in the home view under layers, if you hit, actually no, yeah, if you just hit layer properties, you should get something that looks sort of similar to this, that hopefully isn't locked to the freaking taskbar like that. There we go. You should get something that looks like this. And there's a button here. You can hit Alt N or you can hit this button to make a new layer.
Whoa.
What should we call the layer?
So call the layer title block. Oh, I already made that. Well, you guys can make that. I'm gonna call it stuff layer because I have to name it something. Hang on one second. Will you bring me the dog? I need to do a update.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have your new title block layer. So if you go into call, which is for color in that column, change it to blue. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this piece, and then I'm going to go down here and select this piece as well. And be careful when you're grabbing this part up here, the rev block part up here. Only grab the yellow part and don't overlay those numbers, because you'll wind up grabbing those numbers too. So make sure you just grab this rev block and then this rev block down here, because those are part of the same thing. Oh, there's the pup. Look, guys, it's time for a pup date.
Hey.
Yay.
Hey, this is Goober. She's now making solid poops 5 times a day.
Nice.
Dude, she's getting so fat. It's awesome. She seriously weighs like at least 25% more than when we got her. It's amazing. Okay, so once you've selected both of those, go into the top in that layer properties area again and select that drop down and then select title block. So what that does is that's grabbing or that's moving that content into the title block layer. Okay. And then you hit escape. So now why is this still yellow? Because the title block layer, we changed the color to blue. Does anybody know why?
Wait, did you just select title block and that was it?
Yeah, so you just go in that drop down and hit title block, and it's now part of the title block. So if you click on it again and look here, it says title block, right? You see
that dropped down. Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah, so when you open that up, you made a new layer, right? You created a new layer, and now that's just an available layer to assign things to, right?
Okay.
And then by selecting this and selecting this drop down, now you're assigning that content that you select. Oops, that's not what I meant to do. Now you're assigning that content that you selected to that layer, that title block layer, right? And you could assign it to whatever layer you want. That's just the one we want to assign it to. Everybody with me?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. So now, again, the question is, why is this yellow when our title block color is blue?
Because the color is set to yellow, not to by
Exactly.
a layer.
Exactly. So generally speaking, you wanna set all content properties to be done by layer, right? So this is again, the line weight and the color were both set in to a specific value and not the layer properties. Thank you, Bert.
She'll bring her back in.
Yeah. Cool. So now again, this content up here, we need to do the same thing. It needs to be set by layer and not by not to a set color. And so now, if I go in to if you go into the layer properties again and go to change the color, let's say to a pretty pink, bam, now my content changes color with the layer, right? So that's another really important thing to keep in mind is, generally speaking, you want to try to keep things under like macro control in AutoCAD. You don't want to manually set object properties. You want to assign them to a layer that has a set convention for that layer. And so that way you can just, if you want to change something, you can do it globally rather than manually to each local object. So generally speaking, when you create content, so this is an answer to the question in the chat, is there a way to set colors by layer to default? So I think when you create content, it should by default be by layer. So I'm going to create this circle real quick. So I just created that circle. I'm going to select it. And you see it's actually set by layer, right? And so this is one of the things I want to highlight is, like I said, I downloaded this border from an online source. And it came with a lot of inherent problems. So I'm lazy. I don't like creating things from scratch. So I just snagged something that was available for free online, but it came with problems that I'm still fixing, right? So sometimes you buy yourself more trouble by not doing it yourself from the start. So yeah, anything you create by default in AutoCAD will have bilayer properties and not be manually set. Okay, so that's good. That's pretty much the majority of what I wanted to fix. The only other thing I wanted to fix is the location of this. So it's off center. You see where the XY coordinates start. I want to move it. So just select the whole thing, type move, grab that corner, and actually I'm going to zoom way in on here just so I make sure and land it pretty close. And I'm going to drop that right there on that origin point for the coordinates. And I'm pretty much good. So I'll do a zoom expense. Go ahead and change my title block back to blue because I really actually like that color. Close the layers. Cool. This border looks pretty good. I'm happy with that. So if you go back and look here in the layout, that color looks better. Oh, so I moved my content in the model space, right? And so now when I go back to look at the layout tab, it's shifted. So I need to resume my layout space. So you can see that's more visible, right? Yellow doesn't show up on white super good. So that's just a better color to keep all in all.
What zoom command did you use to move it over?
So remember, you got to double click in this window to open the model space. And then you just type Z, which is zoom, and then E for extents. So there's a bunch of different zoom options, and really, I don't, to be perfectly honest, I don't know what a lot of them do. Extense is the one that you're pretty much gonna use all the time because it just snaps the content straight away.
Okay.
Okay, so going back to model space, let's start actually drawing some content. So down on the bottom, turn snap mode on, and this is going to be grid snap. And so that means that whatever content we draw is going to snap onto these grid lines. Okay.
Which one? Where's grid snap again?
So if you go down bottom right and
Yeah.
where all those options are, grid snap.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And there's polar snap and grid snap. Make sure it's grid. Polar is different. And you can tell it's different because they're different words. Okay, so yesterday or on Monday, not yesterday, we drew a bunch of stuff on paper. That is to say, I scribbled a bunch of stuff and you guys watched me make a fool out of myself. So let's draw some of those components that we made. So just go with line. Let's draw a power source.
Is this anywhere within the border?
Yeah, you're gonna want to zoom in.
Okay.
So see how I'm zoomed in until it won't zoom to the grid anymore. Like
Yeah.
I keep zooming in, but more grid lines don't appear. Zoom in all that way. So for the power source, draw a line that's 3 long, and then draw another one. So you can do this 2 ways. Let me start over. Okay, so hit L for line, right? And then I'm going to draw one that's 3 long, and then you can either hit escape and hit L again, or you can just mouse over, and I'm going to get an extra line in there, but that's okay. And do that. Okay. And then I'll just select that extra line that I don't want and delete it. Right. Cool. So now I got a problem because I got grid snap on, but I want to actually draw my line to the middle of this existing line. Right. So I guess let's turn grid snap off, right? Because that'll now allow me to go in and snap to the middle of that line. Did everybody see what I did?
Does snap midpoint not work?
Okay, so that's the thing. Sometimes you'll get settings that are basically fighting each other, right? So if I leave grid snap on and I try to use, oh wait, that did work actually. Oh, that's super weird. It wasn't showing up on the other one. Let me try that again. So this is a single line segment. So the object snap is trying to snap onto the endpoint right in favor of the midpoint. So if you want to go into your object snaps and turn endpoint off, I bet it'll work now. Yeah, so now it lets me snap to the midpoint, right? But now I have the problem of, because grid snaps on, it's still trying to snap to the grid, and I can't draw a perpendicular line. Hey, don't eat my notes, dude, come on. Okay, so the point I'm getting at is like, grid snap can be really good for centering things up. So for example, it's nice for drawing this because I know if I make this, it's nice for drawing this power source because I know if I make my big line 3 grid points long and I make my small line 1 grid point long, the center lines are still going to be lined up, right? So that's nice. Grid's nice for drawing that. But then when I'm drawing my connecting lines, if I leave grid on, all of a sudden it becomes a pain in the butt because, so like, even though I can snap to the midpoint on this line, if I get it just right, which I'm still having trouble doing with grid snap on. There we go. So I got that, but now I can't draw a perpendicular line. So I'm going to turn grid snap off, and then I'm going to draw those connecting lines.
How far over?
As far as you want. It doesn't matter because we're gonna add this to a circuit in a minute. Okay, so I got that. Now I want to draw a diode. So go ahead and turn grid snap back on, and then draw a line, and then draw. Let's see. Yeah. Draw a line like that, and a line like that, and a line like that. Cool. Turn grid snap off, and then draw a line from the midpoint here down across. And then I can go in and use trim to get rid of a bunch of the stuff I don't want. so I can trim out. Actually, you know what? Sorry, 1 second. I want to draw one more line. Turn on this polar restriction, whatever you call that guy. Restrict cursor to specific angles, and then draw one more line across the bottom. Cool. So now I'm ready to start trimming stuff up. So if I got a question on the chat. Okay. So now, yeah, so type in trim, and then we're going to start trimming stuff away. So I want to get rid of, bear with me. It's my first time teaching. Okay, so select this line and this bottom line, and then the body of the diode. And now type trim. So by selecting all that, it's going to let us trim with definition to whatever's selected. So I can get rid of this and this and this and this and this. Not that, apparently, and this. Okay, cool. Now delete these and delete these. And now I have a decent drawing of a diode. That was painful. Sorry.
Why did we need to draw all those extra lines?
I mean, there's more than one way to slice a cat. I'm just demonstrating gratuitous use of framing lines and trimming things. What I was trying to do is basically make this triangle symmetric to the origin of this square. Probably unnecessary. But there's your diode. Okay, so this represents, actually, let's go ahead and free draw our little light arrows for this. That looks pretty decent. And then I'll just grab that and I'll copy it. There you go. Now you got an LED. Pretty slick, huh? So as you can see, this was a little bit time consuming, right? But now I have these two components in my library. And so I can just copy this. I can just grab it. I can turn it into a block if I want with the block command. I'm not going to do that, but if you are building up a library of components like this, you should turn them into blocks and name them. And that way you can set the properties and keep copying them like it's an object. But if I just want a couple of these, I can just go, oh yeah, I need to turn endpoint snap back on. I can just keep copying them and get multiple copies easily, right? Okay. So let's talk about how the right and wrong way to copy things real quick.
John, how do you unselect things again?
Hit escape. Yeah.
But like if you have multiple things and you just want to unselect one.
I think you hit shift. Yeah, so if you hold down shift, that unselect. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, that's useful. Okay, so just a general note on copying things. You can select something and then hit Control C and Control V and get another copy, right? But you shouldn't do that. You should pretty much always use the copy command unless, well, you'll see why. So go ahead and turn grid snap back on and then use the move command to get this sucker back on the grid. Oh, we have a problem. Okay, turn the grid off, type move, select the end piece here, and then turn the grid back on. So now I can snap it to the grid. Did everybody follow what happened there?
Where are you trying to move it to?
I just want it snapped onto the grid somewhere.
Oh.
So, oh gosh. So see how it was off the grid here? So I want to select it, type move, and I'll select the end piece here from
Where's
endpoint
John's
snap.
place?
Okay, so now I want to snap this onto a grid intersection. So to do that, I'm going to go, I think actually the key is F9. Yeah. So I've selected this end piece. I want to snap this end piece onto the grid somewhere. So I hit F9 to turn grid snap back on, and it'll snap to the grid.
Wow.
Wow. Bear with me. So I have grid snap on, and so now I can copy this guy. So I just type copy, and I click the tail piece, and I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Thanks, babe. Okay, so now I have 4 pretty diodes that are all in a row, and they're all symmetric. It's nice, right?
Mhm.
So you can use grid snap for that. The other way you can do this is, go ahead and delete all those. If I come in here and I just draw another reference line, and I'm just going to make it, actually, how far is that? I'm going to make it 1.5 long. Oh gosh, that was bad. I'll try that again. So I'm going to start here, and I'm going to say it's 1.5 long. So just by looking, when I was drawing that line and I went down, if you look at that little pop-up where it says polar 1.5005, angle 270 degrees, I can infer from that that each one of these grid lines is 0.5 long. So if I want it to be 3 grid lines long, as I'm drawing that line, I make sure it's perpendicular, and then I type in 1.5. And so that tells it how long to make that line, right? And it'll just make it in whatever direction I go. So if I say 3, while I have my cursor over perpendicular to that original line, it'll make it 3 units long, perpendicular. Okay, so whack those 2 example lines I just showed. Okay, so now the other way I can do this copy is select that reference line I drew and the diode and type copy. And if I select this intersection of those 2 lines as my base point for the copy operation, I can then go snap this onto the end of that line, and the end of that line, and the end of that line. And I just accomplished the same thing as if I were to use grid snap. So to be honest, I really hate drawing with grid snap on. It's kind of a pain in the behind. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll do some spatial layouts of reference lines with grid snap on, just to get my grid going, and then I'll turn it off and do all the rest of my drawings based on these reference lines. It's kind of a preference thing. You can play around with it, figure out what you do and don't like, but just be aware those options are available to you. Regardless, the point is you need some point of reference when you're creating things and laying out a circuit in order to make it look pretty. Because if you don't have these references in here, your stuff isn't going to be, it won't be symmetric. It won't be laid out in an orderly fashion. It'll be just a little off, and it starts to get really graphically unappealing. So you want to always make sure and use some kind of reference when you're drawing that. Okay, so from last time, we drew an output module, and it had a power supply. So what I'm going to do is draw a line over here. I'm actually going to turn grid snap back on. So I'm going to draw a line out here, perpendicular to those diodes. And now I want these diodes to intersect with that line. So I'm going to select all the front lines off of here, and I'm going to type extend. And then I'm going to click on that new line. why won't you work? Oh, and I'm gonna type edge. Why won't you work? I swear I know what I'm doing. This is embarrassing. I can't get this to work. There we go. Okay. I knew this worked somehow. Okay, so you need to select this reference line and the lines you want to extend. Oh, wait, hang on. Let me test this again.
That worked.
There we go. Okay, sorry. So when you're using extend, I forgot how to do this. It's been a while since I used it. You select the line that you want to extend the things to, type extend, and then you select the things that you want to extend into it. So this is what we're extending to. We select that first, type extend, then we select all these things and they'll magically shoot into it. That's a really useful command if you remember how to use it. Okay, so now we have all those intersections. The next thing I want to do is actually bring this down. So you can just do it. So that was sticking up past. All I did is highlight it, click on the end, and move it down to snap it in place here. Okay. And then I'm going to select this this power supply right here, and I'm going to rotate it so I can fit it into my circuit where I want it. So I'm going to select it, type rotate, specify the turn grid snap off, specify the base point, and then I can rotate it by hand, or I can tell it how far I want it to rotate. In this case, I'm going to say 270 degrees and get it where I want it. Okay, now I'm going to grab this guy and I'm going to move it and snap it onto that intersection right there. And then I'm going to draw another line off of here, because I'm going to connect all of this up to an output module. So we're running short on time. I was actually going to have us download some files, but I think we'll do that next time around. So real quick, let's just draw a rectangle. You can do that by typing in rec, and then just click and drag and draw a rectangle like that. And then off of these lines, I'm going to do that same extend command. So now they intersect. And then I'm going to go in here and draw a circle. So CIR. And it's going to freeze on me. Okay. So that circle is just going to represent the termination point. So I'm not even going to really, or actually I'm just going to specify 0.25 for the radius. Okay. And I'm going to want this same circle for everything. So I'm going to select it and type copy. And then I'm going to select that intersection as my copy point. And then I'll just click on the next 3 lines to copy that exactly. Looks pretty good, right? So the only thing I screwed up is I need this to terminate onto my output block as well. So I'm going to select that rectangle, click here to stretch it up. And now that intersection's there. So I'll do another quick copy. Select the intersection. Select that intersection, and I copied the circle again. So now I want to get rid of this line. So I'm going to select all this geometry, both my big rectangle and the circle. I'm going to say trim. I have to do each piece of this. That's okay though. Okay, so the last thing we need to do is select all the wires except the rectangle and do a move command. And move this over 2 grid points. And so all I'm showing is these circles are termination points for wires. And so we're just showing that they're inside this module here. And then,
Did you move the rectangle over, or did you move the circles over?
no, I moved the circles over. You could move the rectangle too. The only reason I did the circles is just so I could see how many grid lines I was moving.
Okay.
And just for the sake of brevity, I'm actually not using grid snap. I'm going too fast. So this isn't actually snapped to the grid anymore, which is a bad thing, but it's fine because we're going to resize it later. One more thing. Typically, when you show termination points like this, you don't show the wire going all the way through. You show it going up to the circle. So I'm going to select all these, type trim, and then trim the wire out of the middle of them. And then if you want to get super fancy schmancy, we're going to turn object snap off and draw a line through like this. And I'm just freehanding this, so it's not going to be exact, but it's fine. And then I'm going to say copy that. And the only reason I'm copying it is so I can get it perpendicular. I guess it goes right about there. I extend this back out. Okay, and then I'm going to trim that again. So trim this, 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 and this, all the stuff that's sticking outside your circle. Okay? So now I have this thing that looks like a flathead screw, which all your, pretty much all wire termination points are going to be flathead screws or flathead bolts, whatever. So that just makes it a little bit more clear that this is actually a physical termination point for a wire. So now I want to get the same thing for all my circles here. So I'm going to turn object snap back on, make sure center point is selected. I'm going to select these 2 lines, hit copy again. I'm going to find the center point for this circle. So the way you find a center point on a circle is you have to mouse over the edge first and then go to the center, and it'll find that center point for you. So now I'm just copying these 2 lines. So now I'll go to the next circle, select center point, center point, center point, and the last center point. Now, hopefully you guys can see where I made a mistake in this, right? Is that I should have drawn on when I drew my first circle, I should have drawn these screw lines, right? So that when I copied it, they all have the screw lines and I don't have to go back and fix that, right? So that's another point where if this was a more complicated object, you might make it a block so that you can just copy the block and then go edit the attributes later on down the road, right? So now I have my circuit drawn that we showed last time. And if I zoom out, this is really small inside this border. So if I were to, if that was the only circuit I was drawing and I was going to go print this drawing out and send it to somebody for review, that looks really funky, right? I have all this white space in there with nothing else really shown. So the last thing I want to do is I want to say, okay, I want this to be a lot bigger. And I'm going to draw a rectangle as a point of reference for how big I want this to show up in this drawing, right? So that seems like a reasonable scale of space to have it shown in my drawing, right? And if you don't if you don't know what I'm saying, it's probably because I'm not saying it very clearly. You'll see in a second. So I have that rectangle, right? I want to select this circuit, and I'm going to move it by grabbing this corner and moving it into this corner of the rectangle, okay? And then I'm going to select this again, and I'm going to say scale. And so scale is just a way to resize objects. So the first thing you have to do is specify a base point for your scale, and you generally want to specify that base point on your object. We've got a question here. Yeah, I know we're going a little over time. We're just going to wrap this up and then call it a day. So if you got to leave, no worries. Okay. So now I can just click and drag and scale it, which is very hard to get it to the right size you want. So I'm going to type reference, and then it says specify reference length. Okay. So now my reference length is off the object that I'm scaling. And so what I'm doing is I'm saying, this is my reference length on this object that we're going to rescale. So that reference length, I'm going to go from this corner of the rectangle to this corner of the rectangle of my module. Okay. And so now, as I move my, you'll see as I move my cursor, it's resizing based on that length that I defined. And so the last thing I need to do is give it a reference point to scale to, right? That's what it's looking for. So I said, I have this long of a stick, and this is my base point of that stick. And now I'm going to tell you where this end of the stick needs to be, right? So it starts here, and then I drag that end of the stick to wherever I want it to reset the scale. And it scales the entire content with me. So what I'm going to do is zoom out and go down and select the bottom of this rectangle right here. That's your endpoint. And bam, it rescaled the whole thing. And so now this is a pretty decent size to fit the border of our drawing, right? Now the last thing I want to do is center this in here, which you can probably just click and drag and do that fairly easily, right? That looks pretty good. Now, if I want to geometrically center this, I can draw a rectangle around it, right? And again, I'm just eyeballing this a little bit. And I'm going to grab that and completely move it out of the box just to get it out of my way so I don't have to worry about it. And I'm going to draw a couple reference lines inside this framework. Ooh, I just realized, yeah, that is my center. That's fine. I should have gone down to this bottom because there's some content up here that might skew the center point, but that's okay. All right, and then I'm going to do the same thing on this reference rectangle that I drew around here. And all I'm doing in here is getting my center point. So now I'll select all this content, zoom into that crosshair, type move, select the center point, move it, and bam. The one thing I forgot to do in this that I should have done is draw my reference stuff in a reference layer, because then I could just go hide that reference layer. Instead, because I did all this manually, now we got to manually go in and select all the reference content that I don't want anymore and delete it, which is kind of a pain in the butt. I mean, it's not the worst. I got it all pretty quick, but you can see where instead of relying on me remembering and knowing what reference material it is, it would have been better to draw all of this in a reference layer that I don't have defined. So I'm just going to use the DenRail layer as my reference layer. So I changed all that content into the DenRail layer, and then I'm going to go into DenRail and I'm going to turn it off. And it's going to freeze on me. And now you can see that's gone. So that goes back to what I was talking about in our first meeting about using a reference layer for reference grid lines in geometry. Hi, Aria. Hi, Riker. Okay, so I now have my diagram done. I can see it nice and clear here. You can see that these are diodes, this is a power supply, these are termination points. The scale of this drawing is probably a little off. These termination points are probably too big in reference to the size of these diodes. But that's okay. You get the general idea, and that's something you can play with on your own. I got to be honest, my artistic ability is pretty weak, and so when it comes to like sizing things off on the fly like this, I'm not very good. I actually try to cannibalize content from other people's drawings as much as possible because they're better at making this stuff pretty. But in terms of demonstrating the concept, I think you get the idea, and can go forth and do much better than I in the future. So the last thing is, I once again made the mistake that I told you not to do of going into the paper space and the layout space. So I'm gonna, or going into the model space and the paper space. So I'm gonna zoom Extense, click outside of that, and we're done. Now we have a nice, pretty schematic drawing. Hopefully my pacing was pretty good and you guys followed all that. You guys are more than free to go. We're over time, but I'm happy to take any questions anybody had through the whole thing. Going once. Nothing. Nothing from nobody.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Is there a more convenient way to zoom in and zoom out to a specific place on the drawing board on the model, as instead of just type in P and then use the move every single time? Because when I try to use the cursor wheel to moving in and out, it's hard to zoom in at a specific location, see the whole picture, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think I know what you're saying. So if you go into, if you double click on the, to get in, you're talking about resizing in here, right, Chris? In the layout space?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so once you get in here, yeah, if you type Z and E, it'll zoom to the extent of your content. As far as zooming to a specific area in here, not really. I think here, let's try the window command. So I'm gonna throw a rectangle in there. All right, so I'm gonna go zoom and then window. And I think it's gonna let me, yeah. So that's another zoom option, is you can specify the window you want to zoom to. But personally, like I said, like really, by the time you're specifying that window, you might, to me, you might as well just scroll with your mouse. Does that answer the question you were asking?
Yeah. I mainly just wanted to find a way so I can be lazy, because when I copy and paste the triangles, what do you call it?
The diodes.
Yeah, the diodes. When I try to copy and paste and then move one and paste it one after the other, I have to zoom in and zoom out every time.
Yeah. I mean,
but if it's just the default of AutoCAD, then yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't zoom to follow what you're drawing, unfortunately. I would say, you're gonna develop some personal preferences on how you do things, how you move content, as you work in this. And so, figure out what works for you. As far as that specific issue, I don't think there's a way to make it track what you're doing.
All right.
So I had another question. This one about the paper view being slightly shifted. So that is also what we're talking about here. So if you double click in the paper space, and that's tunneling into the model space. So if it's shifted like this, what you want to do is double click in here, and it'll get you in, and then type Z and then E, and it'll zoom to the extent of your content in that paper space. And then from there, you got to make sure and click outside of that content, because otherwise when you zoom, yeah. Yeah, and I mean, it's, you know, like I said, AutoCAD will drive you absolutely insane because the most simple thing, you know, has maybe 3 or 4 steps like this that you have to do in the correct sequence and the correct order and make sure you get every step right, or it's just not going to do what you want it to. And so, again, that just comes from playing with it and making those mistakes over and over. And that's why I covered that specific one, because like I said, I do that all the time, and I should know better than to look out to not make that mistake. So again, it's just time in the seat controlling this stuff. You'll get the hang of it as you're doing drawings, but just keep that stuff in mind. Okay, cool. That's what I got. Any more questions? Going once, going twice.
When I change the layer,
Uh-huh.
it doesn't change the color. So when I was trying to change it to the blue, like you did, it just stayed yellow but changed the layer.
So you selected this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then you changed it to the title block, right?
Yeah.
So did you see here in properties where it has the color by layer?
Ah, no,
Yeah.
now it works.
Yep. Yeah,
Thanks.
so that's a big thing to watch out for, again, is make sure your properties are by layer, unless you specifically just want this thing, like, I don't care what happens in this drawing, whatever edits happen, this thing is always going to be yellow. That's
Okay.
when you would select it by color manually. But generally speaking, you want global macro control of things. You don't want to be setting things manually by hand.
Cool. Thank you.
Sure thing. All right, guys. I'm going to wrap questions unless anybody's got something else. Cool. Thanks for joining us today. Sorry we went a little overtime. Hopefully everything was clear. You're always welcome to send me email questions as well. And I'll see you guys on Monday.